Hey everyone. Tonight we drift back to ancient Egypt, to the Pharaoh's palace, a place that gleamed as if the sun itself had decided to reside indoors. You walk through massive sandstone doors, and the scent of incense and polished wood greets your nose, mingling softly with a faint metallic tang of gold. Every corridor seems alive with reflections. Every throne, table, and ornament shimmers under torchlight. Before we settle into this journey, take a gentle moment to like the video and subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy this calm exploration of history, and maybe leave a comment sharing where you're watching from and what time it is. As you wander past towering statues and walls decorated with hieroglyphs, you can almost hear the stories of gods, ceremonies, and ancient battles whispering through the stones. Scholars still debate how much of the palace's shine was purely aesthetic, and how much was meant to display divine power. You imagine the servants, countless hands polishing every surface until it radiates like liquid sunlight. Gold wasn't just decoration, it was a statement, a way for the pharaoh to literally outshine the desert sun. Some historians argue that even minor scratches could be seen as disrespect, while others think this might have been exaggerated over time. At dawn, the servants begin their careful work. You watch them move in coordinated rhythm, cloths in hand, gently buffing the legs of golden chairs, the armrests, and small decorative boxes. The sound is faint, almost meditative, like the whisper of wind across the dunes. Occasionally, a tiny slip on the polished floor causes a soft, stifled laugh behind a column, a gentle reminder that these were humans, not statues. Records mention that workers sometimes used a mixture of natron, fine sand, and oils to restore the gold's shine, a technique that required patience, skill, and endurance. By midday, the palace seems to glow even brighter. Leaning against a column, you breathe in the mixture of oils, dust, and incense, and realize that the beauty isn't just in the gold, it's in the ritual itself. Centuries of repeated, patient movements create a soft rhythm, almost hypnotic. Researchers still debate whether this obsession with perfection served practical purposes, like preserving metal, or symbolic ones, such as reinforcing the pharaoh's omnipotence. But one thing is certain, in this quiet, golden world, even the simple act of polishing becomes a slow, soothing ceremony. As the first pale fingers of dawn stretch across the desert sky, the palace is still mostly silent. The servants rise quietly, careful not to disturb the pharaoh or the early morning guards. Their first task is simple, yet essential, preparing the cloths and polishing powders that will bring the golden furniture to life. The linen cloths are washed with gentle care, fluffed and dried, while small bowls of finely ground stone powders, mixed with oils, await their hands. The air is cool and soft, carrying the distant calls of birds over the palace walls. Each servant moves with a rhythm born of centuries of repetition, a choreography of subtle gestures that seems almost sacred. They whisper soft prayers to the gods, asking for steady hands and a clear mind. Even in these early hours, the palace seems to hum with anticipation, as though the gold itself is awake, waiting to be touched. You can imagine the way the servants dip their cloths into the soft powders, then begin to polish, turning over tiny objects, brushing corners and edges, making sure that no speck of dust remains. The mixture of stone, powder, oil, and golden reflection gives off a faint, warm scent, like the desert sun gently warming the earth. Each movement is careful, measured, and silent, yet somehow musical, the soft swish of cloth across metal, forming a lullaby of labor. The first light hits the polished surfaces, sending reflections dancing across walls and ceilings. In these moments, the palace transforms into a quiet symphony of gold, ritual, and devotion. Even before the day has begun, the servants' hands are already weaving magic into the world. An ordinary yet mesmerizing act that connects them to the pharaoh, the gods, and centuries of tradition. By mid-morning, the palace begins to shimmer even more. Tiny particles of gold dust float lazily in the beams of sunlight streaming through the high windows. They twist and twirl in the air, catching the light like miniature stars suspended in a slow, eternal dance. For the servants, this golden haze is both a sign of their work and a gentle companion, silent, sparkling, almost magical. Each servant moves carefully, aware that even the smallest puff of dust can settle on a polished surface and mar its perfection. They dip their soft cloths into the polishing mixture, brushing the golden surfaces with deliberate care. The motion is hypnotic, back and forth, around corners, along edges, as if the air itself were a canvas, and their hands were painting with light. Occasionally, a wisp of gold rises higher, drifting past their faces. They might pause, inhaling softly, and marvel at the shimmer suspended in the warm air. There is a quiet pride in knowing that their labor is creating something timeless, an environment where sunlight and gold meet, where reflections of the Pharaoh's glory sparkle in every corner. Even the faintest movement of a servant sends tiny sparks gliding through the air. A slow ballet that has been performed in this palace for centuries. Outside, the desert heat begins to climb, but inside, the golden haze seems to soften the brightness, turning the palace into a calm, meditative space. Each breath, each sweep of the cloth, feels like a part of a ritual older than memory, connecting the human, the divine, and the eternal gleam of gold. In these moments, you could almost forget time exists, drifting alongside the sparkling dust as the palace hums quietly with its ancient rhythm. Not all the magic of the Golden Palace comes from effort alone. Behind the gleam lies a carefully guarded secret, the polishing mixture. Ancient Egyptian servants knew that a blend of natural ingredients could transform dull gold into a surface so bright it seemed to hold sunlight itself. The recipe combined finely ground limestone, soft beeswax, and a touch of Nile mud, each element chosen for its unique properties. The limestone served as a gentle abrasive, smoothing the gold without scratching it. Beeswax added a warm glow and protective layer, preventing tarnish in the desert air. The mud, surprisingly, acted as a subtle binder, helping the mixture adhere evenly and creating a uniform shimmer. Each servant learned this formula through patient apprenticeship, passing it down quietly from one generation to the next, as if they were guarding not just gold, but a piece of the Pharaoh's eternal light. Preparing the mixture was a ritual in itself. Servants measured, ground, and blended the ingredients with meticulous care, mindful that the slightest miscalculation could dull the shine. The scent of beeswax mixed with earth and limestone filled the air, a comforting aroma that marked the beginning of their day. With each application, the mixture seemed to hum quietly under their fingers, a subtle reminder that their hands were instruments of beauty, shaping reflections that would captivate all who entered the palace. Even now, historians debate the exact proportions and methods. Some suggest that every household had its own variation, while others argue that the Pharaoh's personal artisans maintained a master recipe. But in the quiet mornings of the palace, these details hardly matter. The ritual, the rhythm, and the slow, deliberate creation of radiance were what made the work almost meditative. As you watch the mixture gliding across golden surfaces, it's easy to drift along with the shimmering rhythm, feeling the palace itself breathe under centuries of care. Before their hands ever touched gold, the servants began their day with a quiet ritual. Dawn's first light filtered through narrow windows, casting soft beams on the sandstone floors. Each servant washed their hands and feet, mindful of both cleanliness and reverence. They whispered small prayers, murmuring gratitude for protection and guidance, acknowledging the sacred trust they held in caring for the Pharaoh's treasures. Some recited short chants in honor of Ra, the sun god, whose energy seemed to dwell within the golden surfaces they would soon touch. Others muttered gentle encouragements, reminding themselves to work patiently, without haste. The sound of flowing water and soft murmurs created a calm rhythm, almost like a gentle lullaby, to start the day. Even small, meditative movements, stretching arms, bending knees, prepared both body and mind for hours of careful polishing. The ritual wasn't just practical, it was a bridge between the human and the divine. Each touch of gold required both skill and mindfulness. Servants imagined the throne glowing brighter with each passing moment, their hands guiding the light across intricate carvings. It was an almost hypnotic routine: wash, pray, stretch, breathe, then begin. Modern historians and anthropologists debate whether these prayers were truly spiritual or more a means to instill discipline and focus. Either way, for anyone present, the early morning hours felt sacred. The palace, still quiet, except for the faint sounds of water and whispered words, seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the first glimmer of hands upon its golden treasures. Even today, you can almost hear the soft rhythm, Water trickling, voices murmuring, cloths brushing gold, soothing, steady, meditative. It's a reminder that even in the grandest of palaces, care and patience begin in the smallest, quietest of rituals. The pharaoh's throne wasn't just furniture. It was a sacred seat, a physical connection to the sun god Ra himself. Servants approached it with both awe and precision, knowing that each inch of gold needed to reflect light perfectly. The morning ritual was complete. Now came the true work, gliding soft cloths across gilded armrests, tracing delicate carvings, and buffing every curve until it gleamed. As they worked, a quiet rhythm emerged. The swish of cloth against metal became almost musical, a meditative cadence that echoed softly through the chamber. Sometimes a servant paused, inhaling the faint mix of honeyed beeswax and metal, imagining the throne radiating warmth across the entire palace. A small misstep, a tiny slip, or a clumsy hand was quickly corrected, but laughter sometimes bubbled quietly behind tall columns, a gentle reminder of their humanity. Gold polishing required not just care but understanding. Ancient mixtures of natron, oils, and fine sand enhanced the shine. But the real magic lay in patience. Each stroke was deliberate, guided by both technique and respect. It wasn't merely cleaning, it was participating in a centuries-old ritual, where servants became silent collaborators in the pharaoh's eternal light. Even modern scholars marvel at the devotion required. Some argue this labor was a demonstration of obedience, while others see it as a form of quiet meditation, an opportunity to focus the mind in repetition. For those present, it didn't matter. Time seemed to slow as hands moved in careful arcs, the golden surface responding with a soft, hypnotic glow. By the end of the morning, the throne shone like liquid sunlight, and the chamber itself seemed transformed. It wasn't just the gold that gleamed, it was the combination of ritual, rhythm, and reverence that made the pharaoh's seat feel sacred. Watching it, you understand that sometimes, even the simplest acts of care, slow, steady, and thoughtful, can become a quiet celebration of light. The Egyptian sun was relentless, even through the high sandstone windows of the palace. Servants bent over their golden duties, feeling the warmth seep through their linen tunics. Every bead of sweat seemed to carry a story of devotion, a tiny offering to the sun god. But the desert was never gentle. Sand sneaked in with every breeze, dusting polished surfaces and making their careful work even more challenging. They moved slowly, deliberately, wiping, buffing, and inspecting each piece. The crunch of fine grains underfoot reminded them of the world outside, of endless dunes and shifting winds. One misplaced particle could leave a scratch on the gold, so every gesture had to balance speed with grace, precision with patience. Some servants hummed softly to themselves, a rhythm that matched the gentle swish of cloth on metal. Others whispered quiet encouragements, laughing softly when a rogue sand grain made a sudden appearance. It was a dance, an intricate choreography of human effort and natural intrusion. Despite the heat and grit, the work had a calming rhythm. There was a meditative quality to tracing patterns, polishing curved edges, and watching sunlight bounce off golden surfaces. Modern observers suggest this repetitive motion might have been soothing, almost hypnotic, a way to focus the mind and steady the heart. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the golden furniture seemed to radiate even more intensely. Each piece bore the fingerprints of care, each surface glimmered with attention. And though the servants' tunics clung with sweat and sand threatened their polish, there was satisfaction in the subtle perfection they created, a small, glowing triumph in the heart of the desert palace. As servants polished golden tables and chairs, their eyes often wandered to the walls surrounding them. Hieroglyphs stretched from floor to ceiling, each symbol carefully carved and painted, telling stories of gods, kings, and long-forgotten ceremonies. In the quiet moments, when the palace felt almost empty, it was as if the glyphs themselves whispered softly, sharing secrets only the diligent might hear. Some believed that listening closely could guide their hands, reminding them of patience and reverence. Each symbol seemed to hum a silent rhythm, matching the gentle sweep of cloth across a polished surface. The combination of gold's reflective gleam and the intricate walls created a serene, almost magical environment where work and wonder intertwined. Occasionally, a curious servant would trace a hieroglyph with a fingertip, feeling the carved grooves under their skin. Others would pause to imagine the ceremonies being depicted, letting the stories drift into their thoughts like a calm river. Scholars today debate whether ancient Egyptians intended such meditative effects, or if it was simply artistry. But for the servants, these symbols offered a quiet companionship through hours of meticulous labor. By the end of the morning, the room was not only shining with gold, but also rich with the silent tales of the past. Every sweep of the cloth seemed to honor the stories etched into the walls, turning what could have been monotonous labor into a gentle, immersive ritual. In this palace, even the inanimate seemed alive, breathing history into every polished surface. Every morning, before a single chair or box was polished, the servants would carefully gather their tools. Simple yet essential, each item had a purpose honed over generations. Soft linen cloths, chosen for their smoothness, cushioned the delicate gold surfaces. Feather brushes, often from local birds, allowed the smallest corners and carvings to gleam. Small stones and bone powder, mixed with oils, became gentle abrasives capable of restoring shine without scratching. Handling these tools required both patience and mindfulness. One slip, one misplaced pressure, could leave a scratch that would catch the pharaoh's sharp eye. Yet, there was a rhythm to their work, a subtle choreography as cloth swept across armrests. Brushes danced along carvings, and powders smoothed imperfections. Even mundane movements felt ceremonial, each motion echoing centuries of tradition. Sometimes a new servant would marvel at the array of tools, learning to respect each one as if it were a treasured companion. The old hands would whisper tips, how to hold a brush for maximum polish, how to fold a cloth to reach hidden angles, how to mix powders just so. Over time, these instruments became extensions of their hands, almost like friends guiding them through hours of meditative labor. By mid-morning, when golden light streamed through palace windows, the tools had already transformed plain surfaces into radiant reflections. For the servants, mastery of these simple objects was both practical and deeply satisfying, turning a laborious task into a quiet, contemplative ritual. Stepping quietly into the pharaoh's chamber felt like entering a sacred world. The golden surfaces reflected soft morning light, and the faint scent of incense lingered, wrapping the room in calm. Servants moved like shadows, their cloths and brushes in hand, careful not to disturb even the smallest object. Every touch had to be gentle, precise, almost reverent, as if the gold itself were alive. Throughout the day, the chamber was never completely silent. The soft whisper of polishing, the delicate clink of tools, an occasional hushed conversation created a rhythm, like a heartbeat beneath the grandeur. Servants learned to time their movements, coordinating with one another to avoid interruptions. Even the smallest misstep, a brush bumping a chair leg, could send a ripple of concern through the room. But it was also a reminder of their human presence. In between polishing, they observed the pharaoh's rituals from a respectful distance, the morning offerings, prayers to Ra, and quiet reflections by the throne. They understood that their work was part of a larger rhythm, supporting the godlike figure without ever seeking attention. The day passed in gentle cycles, a sweep here, a buff there, a pause to admire how the sunlight made the gold glow like liquid warmth. By afternoon, the room seemed to pulse with light. Each polished surface caught the sun, reflecting soft patterns onto the walls. The servants' careful labor turned the chamber into a serene space, where even the most opulent gold became a source of quiet meditation. Every day repeated this pattern, a gentle, hypnotic routine that carried the echoes of centuries and the silent awe of human hands meeting divine ambition. In the quiet stillness of the pharaoh's chamber, even a single fingerprint on the golden surfaces could cause a flurry of whispered warnings. Servants moved cautiously, their fingers wrapped in soft cloths, polishing with gentle strokes. Ancient records suggest that any mark left behind was considered an insult to the gods themselves, a reminder that gold was not merely decoration, but a sacred medium connecting mortals to divinity. The air smelled faintly of beeswax and oils, and every brushstroke seemed to hum with importance. A misstep, a finger left unprotected, a smudge on a chair arm, could send a servant scurrying to correct it before the overseer noticed. Sometimes, this fear became almost meditative. Each careful movement required focus, calm breathing, and a quiet awareness of the rhythm of work. It was a strange blend of anxiety and serenity, like balancing on the edge of a gentle dream. Yet, the servants learned to find humor in tiny mistakes. A smear that couldn't be fully erased might be whispered about later, creating soft laughter behind pillars and drapes. The curse of a fingerprint was both a superstition and a gentle reminder of human imperfection. A subtle lesson that even in sacred spaces, life could be tenderly playful. By nightfall, the chamber gleamed flawlessly again. Every surface reflected torchlight and moonlight alike, and the servants could finally relax, knowing they had respected the gold, the Pharaoh, and the rhythm of centuries, old ritual. In these quiet moments, polishing became more than work. It became a meditation, a slow, hypnotic journey, perfect for drifting into sleep. By mid-morning, the palace was filled with a quiet, almost musical rhythm. Servants moved in coordinated patterns, each brushstroke syncing with the next, creating a gentle cadence that echoed softly through the golden halls. The polishing was not hurried. Instead, it followed a steady, meditative pace, like a slow song performed by countless invisible hands. The sound of cloth against gold was delicate, almost hypnotic, a faint whisper like wind brushing over the desert dunes. Observing the servants, one could imagine each movement as a ritual dance, a choreography passed down through generations. Some would hum softly, adding a human melody to the metallic resonance. There was a subtle poetry to the work, a quiet artistry that transformed the mundane task of cleaning into a mindful meditation. Mistakes were gently corrected, with no rush or anger. Each polisher learned to anticipate the motion of their neighbor, maintaining harmony. The rhythm became almost magical. The gold seemed to shimmer more brightly when touched in sync with the shared beat. The palace, gleaming under the sun, was alive with silent music, a lullaby of metal, cloth, and devotion. By late morning, the servants paused, taking in the gentle gleam of a chair leg or the sparkle on a small jewelry box. Their eyes, tired but content, reflected not just the gold, but the meditative flow of hours spent in harmony. In this rhythm, in this quiet repetition, the palace became more than a home of wealth and power. It became a space of calm, a sanctuary for both body and mind, perfect for anyone listening and drifting toward restful sleep. As the sun shifted higher in the sky, its rays filtered through the palace's small windows, scattering across walls and floors. The polished gold furniture caught the light, reflecting it in soft, wavering patterns that danced slowly across the stone surfaces. Each shimmer was gentle, like liquid sunlight spreading in lazy ripples, and it created a serene, almost hypnotic ambience. Servants moved carefully among the glimmering surfaces, their movements timed to avoid disturbing the delicate reflections. Every polished table, chair, and chest became part of a luminous mosaic, an interplay of human effort and the sun's warm glow. The golden hues seemed to breathe with the palace, exhaling calm and inviting quiet reflection. Occasionally, a hand would pause, tracing a familiar contour, appreciating the subtle gleam of a freshly polished corner. In that moment, the palace didn't feel like a building of power. It felt like a living, breathing organism, shimmering in harmony with those who tended it. Even small details, like a sunbeam glancing off a golden handle, carried a meditative rhythm, coaxing the mind into gentle relaxation. The servants' eyes reflected not just the gold, but the tranquil patterns of light themselves. They moved slowly, deliberately, allowing the reflections to guide their pace. For anyone observing or listening from afar, it was impossible not to feel a sense of calm washing over the senses, the palace's golden heartbeat syncing with your own, preparing you for a slow, restful drift into sleep. The queen's private chamber was a softer, quieter corner of the palace, where the glow of gold mixed with the gentle gleam of polished bronze and silver mirrors. Here, servants approached their work with the same care as in the main halls. Yet the atmosphere felt more intimate, almost protective. Each mirror reflected not only the queen's regal presence, but also the meticulous effort poured into maintaining every surface. The air was fragrant with the subtle scent of flower oils and beeswax, lingering from earlier polishing sessions. Servants moved slowly, brushing away tiny dust particles from mirror frames and gilded stands. Every sweep of the cloth produced a soft whisper, a gentle rhythm that could lull even the most restless mind. The polished surfaces seemed to multiply light, creating quiet pools of radiance that shimmered on walls and ceiling, inviting calm reflection. Some mirrors had small trays in front, holding jewelry or ceremonial items, each piece gleaming softly in the reflected light. The servants handled these objects with almost reverent patience, ensuring that no smudge or scratch disturbed the delicate harmony of reflections. Occasionally, a faint giggle would ripple through the room when a golden hairpin slipped or a feather tickled a polished edge, reminding them and us that these were living, breathing humans tending the splendor. Beyond the ritual of polishing, there was a meditative quality to the work. The repetitive motions, the soft brushing, the light glinting off every surface, encouraged mindfulness. Even historians note that such tasks may have offered a form of gentle trance-like focus for the workers, allowing their minds to wander, while hands followed long, practiced rhythms. Observing the interplay of mirrors and light, one could feel the palace breathing, the gold and silver surfaces, reflecting centuries of care, devotion, and quiet human effort. By the time the queen arrived, the mirrors gleamed, the trays shimmered, and the room radiated serenity. For anyone standing quietly in the corner, it was impossible not to feel the soothing cadence of centuries, old routines. The queen's mirror room was more than a space of beauty. It was a sanctuary of light, patience, and gentle, hypnotic labor. A perfect setting to slow down and let your thoughts drift toward sleep. Even in the Golden Palace, not every moment was perfection. Behind closed doors, away from the Pharaoh's gaze, servants shared quiet murmurs and small complaints. These whispered conversations were never harsh, more like gentle sighs. Little human reminders that polishing gold, no matter how mesmerizing, could be exhausting. They huddled in shadowed corners, leaning against columns, or ducking behind large furniture, trading stories about stubborn smudges that refused to shine or mirrors that seemed to mock their efforts. The sun itself is jealous of this gold, one might whisper. How can we ever keep up? Another would giggle, describing a chair leg that always managed to catch the edge of a polishing cloth. Even as they complained, their words were soft, almost rhythmic, blending into the hushed ambience of the palace. The murmurs often became humorous exchanges. Someone might invent a story of a mischievous spirit hiding in a gilded box, or exaggerate the importance of a minor scratch, as though it were an omen. These small jokes kept spirits light, a secret layer of playfulness beneath the weight of golden responsibility. Occasionally, a shared laugh would ripple through the corridor, muffled by walls but warm enough to make the labor feel less solitary. Historians note that such moments were vital for morale. The repetitive, careful work of polishing could be hypnotic, even meditative. But it also risked fatigue and frustration. Whispered complaints, gentle humor, and shared stories allowed servants to remain human, to remind themselves that perfection could coexist with imperfection, and that even in service to a sun god, life included small, secret joys. By the time their whispers faded, the golden corridors seemed to hold a quiet magic. Not only the shine of metal, but the warmth of camaraderie. Even as they returned to their meticulous tasks, a sense of connection lingered, a soft thread of shared humanity woven into the palace's endless glow. For anyone listening, it was a soothing rhythm, a quiet, gentle reminder that even work in the sunlit halls could be tender and comforting. Even in the quiet rhythm of gold polishing, one presence never wavered, the overseer. A tall figure with a wooden staff, he moved slowly but deliberately, eyes sharp and attentive. His gaze was not meant to frighten, but to guide, a silent reminder that every shimmer, every reflection was noticed. Servants adjusted their motions slightly when he passed, not out of fear, but out of respect for the centuries of ritual they upheld. The overseer's eyes seemed to dance across surfaces, catching tiny scratches invisible to the casual glance. Each chair leg, table edge, and small box received careful attention under his scrutiny, and yet there was a rhythm to it, almost like a shared dance. Interestingly, the overseer did not speak much. His communication was subtle, a raised eyebrow, a nod, a small tilt of the head. Servants learned to anticipate these cues, adjusting the pressure of their cloths, the angle of their strokes. Over time, his presence became oddly comforting, like a quiet metronome marking the pace of their work, ensuring the palace's golden glow remained consistent without the need for constant words. Sometimes, the overseer would pause to examine a single object longer than necessary. The servants would hold their breath in that moment, hearts quietly racing, only to realize he was not scolding but observing, teaching patience and attention to detail. These moments reminded them that gold was more than decoration. It was sacred, a reflection of the sun, the Pharaoh, and centuries of care. By nightfall, when the overseer retreated to his quarters, the palace seemed to exhale. The servants, still polishing, felt a gentle relaxation, knowing they had met his silent expectations. His watchful eyes, once a source of tension, had become a guide, a soft rhythm embedded in the palace's golden heartbeat. For anyone listening, it was a soothing lesson. Attention, care, and quiet observation can coexist with calm, even in the glittering halls of the Pharaoh. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the palace stirred with a new kind of energy. Tonight the Pharaoh would host a grand banquet, and every golden surface, from the long tables to the smallest trays, needed to gleam like liquid sunlight. Servants moved quickly but carefully, balancing the need for speed with centuries of ritual and respect for gold. The corridors echoed with faint murmurs, the occasional clink of utensils, and the soft swish of polishing cloths. It was organized chaos. One servant carried a tray of fine oils. Another adjusted candles so that reflections danced perfectly across walls, while a third carefully aligned golden goblets. Even amid the rush, there was rhythm, a quiet pulse beneath the flurry, almost meditative if one listened closely. Accidents were inevitable. A tray would tip slightly, spilling fragrant oils, or a servant might bump a chair leg, sending it into a tiny, controlled wobble. Laughter, soft and discreet, rose behind pillars. Yet, even in these small missteps, there was grace. Everyone knew the golden surfaces were sacred, and mistakes were met with quick, practiced corrections rather than panic. Some records suggest that these banquets were more than social events. They were displays of divine order. The polished gold reflected not only candlelight but also the Pharaoh's power, his presence magnified by every shimmering surface. Servants were acutely aware of this, their work blending practical maintenance with symbolic reverence. As the last chair was aligned and the final tray polished, a calm would settle over the room. The initial chaos faded into a satisfying quiet, the kind that comes after a task done well. For the listening mind, there was comfort in imagining this slow, rhythmic preparation, the subtle harmony hidden beneath apparent disorder. Tonight, the palace would glow brighter than ever, not only from gold, but from centuries of careful, devoted hands. Just as the servants were stepping back from their polishing, a small, elegant cat padded silently into the Pharaoh's chamber. Its golden eyes reflected the shimmering surfaces, and for a brief moment, even the most disciplined servant held their breath. No one had invited the cat, yet its presence seemed almost regal, as if it were judging their work with feline authority. The cat leapt gracefully onto the throne, paws pressing against the gold. Gasps and suppressed laughter rippled through the servants hidden behind columns. A single paw print was left, and suddenly the polished perfection was punctuated by a tiny, mischievous mark. Some ancient texts suggest that cats were seen as protectors of the home, while others hint that any disruption to the sacred gold could be interpreted as a divine message. Servants exchanged cautious glances. One brave soul approached with a soft cloth, attempting to remove the paw print without disturbing the cat. The animal, seemingly aware of its power, yawned and stretched, leaving another faint imprint. Instead of anger, the chamber filled with quiet amusement. The golden throne was sacred, yet the cat moved like a living jewel, reminding everyone that life within the palace was delicate, unpredictable, and strangely comforting. While carefully wiping away the paw prints, the servants took a moment to breathe. They watched how the light caught the gold, how shadows of the cat flickered across the walls, and how the sound of soft paws on polished surfaces created a rhythm of its own. In that moment, the palace felt alive in a different way. Not just a shrine to the Pharaoh, but a home shared with creatures who brought unexpected joy. The day continued, and the throne was restored to its gleaming perfection. Yet, the story of the cat's brief reign became a whispered tale among the servants, retold with chuckles and fondness. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, one could almost hear the gentle patter of tiny paws, a reminder that even in a world of gold and ritual, there was room for play and surprise. As the palace drifts into silence, the golden halls still seem alive under the soft glow of the moon. Midnight in the Pharaoh's palace is a time unlike any other. The polished surfaces, now calm and cool, catch every faint beam of light, creating quiet reflections that dance gently along the walls. It's a moment when the palace itself seems to breathe. Servants who remain awake move like shadows, brushing the last corners of gilded tables or adjusting cushions on thrones. The repetitive motion of polishing has become almost hypnotic. Each sweep a gentle whisper, a lullaby of metal and cloth. In these quiet hours, even the smallest movements, the creak of a wooden floorboard, the faint rattle of a cleaning brush, sound amplified in the calm air. Some servants pause to watch the reflections on the walls. Golden streaks shimmer and twist like liquid sunlight caught in a dream. The hieroglyphs cast faint shadows that seem to tell silent stories, old tales of gods, kings, and the desert beyond. At this hour, the palace is not just a place of grandeur, but a serene sanctuary where every shimmer of gold can invite thought, imagination, and quiet wonder. Occasionally, a cat curls up on a nearby cushion, its eyes half closed, reflecting the light as if it too is captivated by the palace's silent beauty. The servant smiles softly, careful not to disturb the fragile piece. This is the magic of midnight polishing, not the gleam itself, but the ritual, the slow, deliberate dance of hands and cloth that has repeated for generations. By the first hint of dawn, these reflections begin to fade. The palace will wake again, bustling with activity. Yet the memory of midnight's golden glow lingers in the servants' minds. It is a quiet magic, a gentle reminder that even the most ordinary work, polishing chairs, arranging cushions, can become an almost meditative experience, soothing the mind and spirit in the stillness of night. In the quiet hours of the palace, the sound of polishing becomes a gentle rhythm that fills the golden halls. Each sweep of the cloth over a gilded surface produces a soft, almost musical whisper, a delicate shush that seems to echo from wall to wall. It is a sound both calming and hypnotic, as if the palace itself is breathing slowly, inviting anyone nearby to relax and drift into quiet thought. Servants move with careful precision, hands gliding over chair arms, tables, and ceremonial boxes. Their movements are deliberate, repeated so many times that they have become a form of meditation. Occasionally, a feather brush dances across carvings, adding a higher, lighter note to the gentle chorus. Even the faint creak of floorboards beneath their feet blends seamlessly into the ambient soundscape, creating a soothing symphony of human effort and golden shimmer. It is during these moments that you realize the magic is not just in the gold itself, but in the act of care. Every polish is a tiny ritual, a slow, rhythmic affirmation of patience and attention. Historians note that this consistent, careful work helped preserve the metal for centuries. But for the servants, the auditory rhythm itself offered comfort. The repetitive shush, swoosh, swipe becomes almost lulling, a natural lullaby woven into the palace's air. Occasionally, a servant hums softly, blending their voice with the gentle sound of cloth on metal. Sometimes a cat pads across the room, adding a subtle, unpredictable note, a soft tap, tap, that punctuates the evening symphony. All these minor sounds, polish, brush, creak, hum, paw, combine into a quiet music that can calm the mind, slow the heartbeat, and invite the restful awareness that preludes sleep. By the time midnight approaches, the palace is almost silent, but the echo of these sounds lingers, like a fading lullaby. Even after the polishing ends, you might find yourself imagining the soft rhythm, letting it guide your thoughts down a gentle, winding path into dreamlike rest. In the Pharaoh's palace, even work becomes a meditative melody, and every sweep of the cloth is part of a centuries-old song of calm. In the golden halls of the Pharaoh, each servant feels a delicate balance between devotion and fear. Their hands, gloved or bare, glide over gilded surfaces with reverence, knowing that every polished inch reflects not only sunlight but the divine authority of their ruler. The gold seems alive, almost breathing under their touch, and even the slightest misstep can spark a quiet tremor of worry. Servants whisper prayers under their breath, small invocations to the gods and spirits, asking for steady hands and calm minds. They know that touching the Pharaoh's possessions is a privilege, but also a responsibility. The slightest scratch or smudge might be seen as disrespect, not just to the human ruler, but to the gods who are believed to reside in these objects. Despite the fear, there is a profound sense of devotion. Each sweep of the cloth becomes an offering, a silent dedication to maintaining the sacred shimmer of the palace. The servant's eyes scan the gold carefully, appreciating the subtle curves and inscriptions, each detail meticulously preserved. It is a quiet, patient labor, where mindfulness and respect intertwine. Occasionally, a servant pauses to inhale deeply, the mixture of beeswax, polished metal, and desert air filling their lungs. The aroma itself reminds them of the power and permanence of the Pharaoh's reign, a gentle reminder of their place in the grand design. Fear exists, yes, but it is tempered by rhythm, ritual, and the soft, meditative cadence of work. As the sun dips behind the sandstone walls, shadows stretch across the gilded surfaces. The servants continue, their fear softened by familiarity, their devotion strengthened by routine. In these moments, polishing is no longer mere labor. It is a contemplative act, a bridge between human effort and divine presence. By the time torches flicker on, the golden halls glow as if alive, a testament to centuries of reverence and a lullaby of meticulous care that even the busiest mind can rest to. The scent of the palace is unlike anything outside its walls. As servants move through the chambers, they inhale the warm, comforting aroma of beeswax mingling with the subtle, metallic tang of gold. It's a smell that lingers on the hands long after the cloth has been laid aside, a fragrant reminder of work done with patience and care. Each polishing session is almost ritualistic, the scent marking the passage of time. Beeswax softens the gold, making every stroke smoother, while the faint mineral smell of the metal reminds them of its permanence. Servants sometimes close their eyes for a brief moment, letting the aroma transport them, imagining the golden sun rising over the desert outside. Even visitors, if allowed, would pause and comment on the fragrance, though none could truly understand its calming effect on the workers. Anthropologists suggest that the repetitive motions combined with the subtle scents created a meditative state, a quiet kind of mindfulness that kept the hands steady and the mind serene. The aroma is also tied to ritual. Before touching the golden surfaces, some servants whisper blessings, letting the smell of beeswax and polished gold carry their intentions toward the divine. It's not just maintenance, it's an offering, a moment of connection between human hands and sacred objects. As the day progresses, the sun filters through tall windows, catching tiny specks of gold dust in the air. The fragrance intensifies slightly, a combination of warmth, wax, and labor that seems to hum softly around them. It's a gentle reminder that they are part of something enduring, a slow and steady work that echoes through the palace halls for generations. Even when fatigue tugs at their limbs, the scent reassures them. Each polished surface, each golden shimmer, is a testament to care, patience, and devotion. It was a quiet afternoon in the Pharaoh's chamber, the golden light bouncing off polished surfaces, when a small, unexpected crack echoed through the room. One of the chairs, a finely carved seat meant for a visiting noble, gave way under its own weight. The servants froze, hands still clutching their soft cloths, as if the fragile throne had whispered a warning. No one was hurt, yet the sound alone sent a ripple of tension through the team. In the world of gold, even the slightest imperfection was seen as significant. Ancient records hint that accidents like these were often interpreted as signs from the gods, a subtle reminder that the divine was watching every shimmer, every polished edge. Servants carefully inspected the damage, brushing away tiny splinters of gilded wood. Some held their breath, hoping the crack would remain minor, while others quietly murmured small prayers, letting the familiar scent of beeswax and gold carry their intentions. It was a delicate balance, to fix the chair without leaving fingerprints, scratches, or marks that might offend the unseen eye of the pharaoh or the gods. After several tense minutes, the chair was stabilized. A mixture of wax and fine sand was gently applied, and the familiar rhythmic polishing motions resumed. What could have been a disaster transformed into a quiet lesson in patience. The incident reminded everyone that their work was not only about shine, it was about attentiveness, respect, and an almost meditative focus on every detail. By evening, the palace's golden surfaces reflected the sunset once again, and the broken chair, now repaired, gleamed alongside its companions. The servants shared a brief, relieved smile, their bodies tired but their spirits calm. Even minor accidents became part of the palace's rhythm, a story whispered along the walls, carried by the scent of wax and gold dust, guiding them gently into the quiet of night. As twilight settled over the pharaoh's palace, The golden surfaces shimmered softly, reflecting the fading sunlight. The servants gathered quietly in a small corner of the chamber, their tools resting beside them. This was the time for the guild's evening ritual, softly singing the old polishing songs that had been passed down for generations. The melodies were simple, almost lullaby, like designed to synchronize their movements and ease the strain of a long day. Each verse told a story, some about the shimmering sun, others about the patient hands that kept the palace gleaming. The rhythm of the songs matched the gentle sweep of cloth across gold, creating a hypnotic dance of sound and motion. Even the youngest apprentices joined in, their voices timid at first, then growing more confident with each repetition. Elders guided them, sometimes whispering corrections, other times laughing softly at a misplaced note. The songs weren't merely entertainment, they were a map of memory, teaching the new generation where to start polishing, how much pressure to apply, and the right way to honor each golden object. Outside, a soft breeze carried the mixed scents of beeswax, incense, and warm stone, blending with the gentle harmonies. The songs had a magical quality. They seemed to make the gold itself glow a little brighter, as if acknowledging the devotion of those who cared for it. For the servants, it was a moment of connection between each other, between their work, and between themselves and the eternal sun god that the palace celebrated. When the last verse faded, a calm settled over the chamber. Even in exhaustion, the servants felt a quiet satisfaction. The songs had not only eased their bodies, but had whispered a story into their minds, preparing them for the gentle descent into sleep. And so, in the soft glow of the palace, the echo of their guild's music lingered, a subtle lullaby for hands, hearts, and the golden halls they cherished. The palace seemed to hold the sunlight itself within its walls. As servants moved quietly from room to room, polishing every surface, there was an almost spiritual rhythm to their work. Gold in the minds of ancient Egyptians was not merely a metal, it was sunlight captured, a divine substance that would never tarnish, never fade. Every swipe of the cloth, every gentle buff, felt like a small act of devotion. The gleaming thrones, the gilded chests, the intricate jewelry displays, they all reflected the eternal light, reinforcing the pharaoh's presence even when he slept. Servants believed that by maintaining this brilliance, they were honoring the sun god Re himself, keeping his warmth and power alive within the palace. In some corners, the air shimmered with faint golden dust, catching the last rays of the day, turning ordinary stone into a radiant glow. Young apprentices watched silently, learning that caring for gold was more than technical skill. It was mindfulness. Each movement required patience, awareness, and respect. Even small mistakes, smudges, or uneven polishing, were opportunities to focus, to realign the hand and the mind. Some of the older servants hummed quietly, the sound blending with the faint rustle of cloth and the whisper of their own breaths. By evening, the palace seemed suspended in a golden haze, each reflection a reminder of permanence and beauty. Observers could see how even the smallest object, an ornamental box, a ceremonial tray, told a story of dedication and ritual. For the servants, polishing gold was a meditation, a gentle, steady practice that connected them to centuries of tradition. When night came, the gold continued to glow softly, as if breathing in time with the palace itself. The servants, weary yet content, would finally lay down, carrying the warmth of the day and the quiet reverence of their labor into dreams. Here, in the eternal shine of gold, history, and human care met in a soft, endless glow. In the late afternoon, the palace held a quieter, almost reverent air. The gold surfaces, still warm from the sun, reflected a gentle glow across the stone floors. Today, the high priest would visit, moving through the rooms with deliberate care, inspecting the pharaoh's treasures and the meticulous work of the servants. His presence was both an honor and a subtle pressure. Every swipe of cloth now carried a hint of scrutiny. Servants whispered to one another, smoothing their motions, careful not to disturb the perfect reflections. As the priest's sandals scuffed softly against the polished floors, a faint scent of incense filled the air, mingling with the lingering smell of oils and dust. Some young apprentices tried to catch his gaze, learning how he moved, how his eyes traced the lines of hieroglyphs, and how he seemed to weigh not just the gold, but the devotion behind each stroke. The high priest paused at a gilded chest, running a finger along the edge, not for touch alone, but as a ceremonial gesture. In these moments, the servants understood that gold was more than a material. It was a bridge between the earthly and the divine. Every gleaming surface was a reflection of both human care and divine favor, a gentle reminder that patience, humility, and focus were as sacred as the metal itself. After moving through the chambers, murmuring prayers and nodding to the most devoted workers, the priest left as quietly as he had arrived. The palace seemed to exhale, the golden light shimmering softly, as if acknowledging both the divine inspection and the servants' tireless devotion. Even as they resumed their polishing, a subtle calm had settled, an almost hypnotic rhythm that made the work feel lighter, slower, and more meditative. By evening, the golden surfaces glowed with an unspoken pride. Servants carried on, their movements almost ritualistic, each pass of the cloth a silent chant of respect and continuity. Outside, the desert light softened, and within, the palace pulsed gently with warmth, devotion, and the endless shimmer of gold. For the workers, this visit was another chapter in the slow, tranquil story of their lives. A moment where human diligence met divine grace. Tucked behind a tapestry in a quiet corridor, a small, dimly lit room awaited the most delicate tasks of the day. This was the hidden repair chamber, where damaged gold objects, ornate boxes, ceremonial staffs, or tiny decorative figurines were carefully restored. The space smelled faintly of beeswax, fine oils, and a hint of metal, a sensory blend that seemed to whisper patience and precision. Servants entering this secret room moved with reverent caution, aware that a single slip could mar a precious surface. They laid out soft cloths, organized brushes, and arranged the finest powders. Each item, no matter how small, received meticulous attention. Repairs were slow, almost ritualistic, as if time itself had slowed to match the delicate work. Some servants hummed low, meditative tunes, matching the rhythm of their hands against the golden surfaces. A gilded statuette might have lost a tiny wing, a ceremonial scepter a faint scratch. Here, these imperfections were neither flaws nor failures. They were invitations to care, to restore balance and shine. Apprentices observed in hushed awe, learning the art of gentle touch and steady focus. The elder repairers shared subtle tips, like how to mix oils for extra luster or how to buff a surface without leaving streaks. Their voices soft, so the gold itself seemed to listen. Outside, the palace hummed with ordinary activity. But inside this chamber, a quiet magic prevailed. Golden fragments reflected candlelight in tiny sparks, and each careful movement contributed to the palace's endless shimmer. It was a room where devotion met craft, where history was preserved in minute gestures and quiet breaths. By the time servants emerged, the objects gleamed anew, ready to reclaim their place in the sunlit halls. The hidden room of repairs reminded everyone that even in the grand spectacle of the Pharaoh's palace, small, unseen acts carried immense significance. The shine was not just in the gold itself, but in the steady, loving hands that nurtured it. For the workers, it was a sanctuary of focus, a gentle meditation disguised as labor, a slow dance with history itself. As the sun begins to lower toward the horizon, its golden rays spill across the Nile, turning the river into a molten mirror. From the palace windows, the servants watch quietly, polishing golden furniture just a few steps away, while the reflection of light on the water seems to echo the gleam they are crafting inside. Each ripple captures fragments of sunlight, scattering tiny dancing glimmers that rival the treasures they tend to every day. The palace itself seems to be part of the river, as if the Pharaoh's gold and the Nile's liquid light were intertwined in a daily ritual of shimmer. Servants pause briefly, letting their eyes follow the gentle flow, imagining that their work is mirrored in nature's own brilliance. Some whisper quietly to one another about how the river reflects not just sunlight, but the presence of gods who favor both the land and its people. Their polishing continues, but the mood is calm, almost hypnotic. The sound of cloth brushing gold mixes with the distant splash of water, a soft rhythm that soothes tired muscles and wandering thoughts alike. Even a small breeze carries the scent of river mud and lotus blossoms, mingling with the subtle aroma of beeswax and oils from inside the palace. It feels as though the entire world has slowed, wrapping everyone in a golden, serene hush. By the time the sun dips further, painting the sky in shades of pink and amber, the palace shines as brilliantly as ever, echoing the sparkling Nile outside. For the servants, it is a quiet reassurance. Their careful work has kept the Pharaoh's treasures radiant, and in doing so, they have participated in a gentle dance between human effort and natural beauty. Tonight, as they finish their chores and step outside to glimpse the river's final gleams, they feel a soft sense of completion, a comforting pause before darkness fully settles. In this moment, the golden reflections of the Nile remind everyone that light is never static. It moves, flows, and bends, much like the patient hands of the servants, who maintain the palace's eternal shine. Here, human dedication and natural beauty coexist in a slow, meditative rhythm, perfect for a bedtime story that carries listeners gently towards sleep. Before the first hint of sunlight peeks over the horizon, the palace is quiet, almost reverent. The servants move softly through the halls, cloths in hand, performing the final touches on golden chairs, tables, and intricate decorations. Each movement is deliberate, almost ritualistic, as though the palace itself holds its breath, waiting for the sun to arrive. The air is cool, carrying a mixture of wax, polished wood, and the faint metallic scent of gold. The servants bend low to reach the tiniest corners, eyes half closed in concentration, muscles humming with practiced precision. Occasionally, a whisper passes from one to another, reminding a colleague to be careful not to leave smudges. Even in these early hours, their work is collaborative, a quiet ballet of dedication and care. Outside, the Nile begins to glow faintly with the approaching dawn, reflecting subtle hints of color onto the palace walls. Inside, golden surfaces shimmer gently under the dim torchlight. There is a kind of magic in these moments, the intersection of human effort, devotion, and natural light, all converging in a soft, almost hypnotic rhythm. Some historians suggest that such meticulous care helped preserve the gold for centuries. Others insist it was a daily meditation, a time for servants to reflect, calm, and simply exist in harmony with their surroundings. Minutes stretch into gentle hours. Each polish, each swipe, seems slower than the last, not from fatigue, but from reverence. They know the Pharaoh will soon wake, and the palace must appear flawless, every surface catching the early sun, as if it were liquid fire. Yet, in the stillness before daybreak, the palace belongs only to them, to their quiet hands and patient minds. As the first rays of sunlight peek through the windows, touching the gold with warm light, the servants step back, surveying their work. A deep sense of satisfaction washes over them. The palace gleams, the gold is ready, and the day is about to begin. This final polish is more than labor. It is a meditation, a silent celebration of dedication, patience, and the quiet beauty of routine. The palace is quiet now, the sun climbing higher in the sky, casting long golden beams across every surface. The servants have finished their morning rituals, their hands tired, but their hearts content. Every chair, every table, every tiny decorative box gleams as if the sun itself has been captured and carefully placed indoors. It is easy to forget the countless hours, the meticulous care, the small, quiet efforts that make such brilliance possible. Yet, in these silent moments, the magic of routine and devotion is clear. The gold reflects not just light, but centuries of human dedication, a story of labor, reverence, and beauty preserved through time. Outside, the Nile shimmers with reflections of the palace, and the soft wind carries scents of honey, oils, and warm sandstone. Inside, the palace hums with the invisible rhythm of careful hands, each movement a note in a century's long melody of polish and patience. The Pharaoh's golden throne sits at the heart of it all, untouched, perfect, an eternal emblem of power and divinity. For the servants, there is a quiet pride. Their work is invisible to most, yet indispensable. Every sweep of the cloth, every subtle buff, contributes to a light that will endure long after they have gone. Some historians argue the Pharaoh's gold was meant to impress the gods. Others say it was a symbol for his people. But for the workers, it is simply a meditation, a gentle, repetitive task that transforms labor into art and care into a ritual. As evening approaches, the palace continues to gleam. Sunlight fades, shadows stretch, yet the gold retains its brilliance, glowing with an almost eternal light. The servants leave quietly, slipping through hidden corridors, leaving behind a palace that shines as it did thousands of years ago. And if you close your eyes, You can almost hear the soft, whispering rhythm of polishing. The heartbeat of history steady and calm, guiding you into a deep, restful sleep.